Good morning, everyone. This is Christina Mills, the Executive Director of CFILC. Just want to say it's wonderful to see you all. I don't typically join your meetings, but certainly want to make sure that we get things right, and wanted to sincerely thank you all for the time that you've been spending with both Catherine and Megan as they've interviewed and gotten to know your concerns and issues related to NATADS and our transition from AT for All to the NATADS system. As many of you know, that was something beyond our control at CFILC. It was something written to the AT state plan and some of our partners across the nation that have been looking to make sure that we're collecting data in the most efficient way to show Congress the need for assistive technology and to support the funding that they provide to programs around the country. With that said, I also just want to thank Vance and Kathy, our national partners, for training Megan and Catherine and I a couple weeks ago as we went through all of your questions and concerns and setting up today and tomorrow's trainings as we record them and make them available for you all after today, but also to hopefully assist in our consistent turnaround issues in California to make sure anybody who's coming on new is also able to review and watch this webinar to be acquainted and learn the NATADS in and outs. With that said, I also just want to thank Paul specifically down on the coast for such detailed notes on the concerns that he's faced in our transition. Paul has been a part of our device lending demonstration centers and previously device lending libraries for years. And just want to also really give a shout out to Freed for sending so many staff to today's training to make sure that we get it right and multiple people can support each other as a result of attending today and tomorrow. Thanks all.
Thank you, Christina. This is Megan again. So we sent out a basic agenda, but our goal is really, Vance is going to walk us through the way NATADS is meant to be used on our user end. And then there are some definitions that we've realized that are in NATADS that we use differently in California. So as that comes up, we'll clarify for folks. And please send questions you have at any time into the chat, and Catherine and I will be monitoring that so we can pull them up as needed. So Vance, if you would like to go ahead and screen share, please feel free, and thank you for joining us again.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'll go ahead and share my screen here so that you guys can see the NATADS application. And I'm going to start by kind of highlighting the internal application. So this is an application that you guys use on a day-to-day basis to enter your transactions, maintain your inventory, maintain your client database, and whatnot. And I've created a test user for the for California, and I tied it to one of your partner organizations. Probably chose the wrong one. It sounds like Freed would have been a good one to highlight today, but we'll go ahead and continue on. I went ahead and created a test user and associated it with the UCP San Diego region. I won't be looking at any specific client information. Everything that you see in here will be test data, except for maybe the devices that you'll recognize as part of your inventory for CPA. So without further ado, when you log into the NATADS day-to-day application and click on the NATADS link or day-to-day link, you get this kind of overall menu that has the different functions of the application. It has the client and inventory functions, the state level functions, which you're going to find device loan, demo reuse, and state financing. And then if you do any of the other functions, they'll be down further in the state leadership. Hopefully, you know, as we go through this and get each one of your user accounts set up appropriately, you'll only see those specific activities that pertain to you or your partner region or organization. So I'm going to focus today in on device loan, reutilization, and how they pertain to the clients and inventory. And then we'll take a look at not only you fulfilling a device loan or completing a device loan from a user standpoint as they call in to request a device, but then we'll go ahead and look at, you know, the public act side of this application where your consumers or your clients can actually come in, create an account, request equipment from the web, and then you can fulfill those requests on the back end. So we'll look at both of those scenarios within the application, and then we'll go from there. So what I try to tell people, and we're going to go ahead and do a call-in scenario where a client calls in and they're getting some information, and maybe you know, it leads to a device loan. I always tell people to start with the clients and then the view clients. So this is where you'll actually be able to go in, see all of your clients, and then you can search and see if the client is already in your system. So I'm going to search by last name, do a search, I find the client or the consumer that I'm speaking with, and they're already in the database, so I can continue on and do what I need to do from there. If they're not in the database, and I go in and search for them, then it'll show me that they're not in the database, and then I have the option to add a new client from here. So I really wanted to start with clients because this is kind of where everything is tied back to, as a client or the consumer that you're serving. So if I add the client, then it is going to ask me for the client information. So I'm just going to put test person in here. On the first name, last name, or company name, not all of them are required. It's either a first and last name or a company name that's required if you're dealing with another organization or something like that. That would be more for some of the other state level activities or state leadership activities. So we'll say it's an individual with a disability. It's a client that's calling in. We're going to put I'll just put a fictitious address in here. I'll call it San Diego County, and then select the zip code. The contact information is any means to contact that client. So if you had, if they gave you an email address, then you can come in here and enter a personal email, add any notes about that particular contact method, and add that. You're not adding the client yet, you're just adding contact information for that client. And I might change that wording at some point. We're looking at different wording there. And then you can add if you want to add a phone number, you can add a particular home phone number, and you can even put notes such as only contact in the PM or whatever the case may be. And you can say, you know, one of the contacts is a primary. That's how they prefer to be or preferred contact, how they prefer to be contacted. And then any notes that pertain to that client. So you could, you know, as you're getting to know the client, you can kind of put some personal or, you know, information in here that pertain to that client and their needs and whatnot, so that you can reference that later on. And then you can save that information. And once you save a client in the system, it brings you up to their client page. Just like if I was to select a client that's already in the system, this is the same page that pops up. And then from here, you can get all the information, and then you can start interacting or performing, you know, device loans or demonstrations or reutilizations for that client. So if they called in, they were looking for an iPad for speech communication, you can come in here and say, okay, well, we'll go ahead and start a loan for an iPad. So I go ahead and click Add Loan. It automatically defaults to today's date as a start date. The purpose of the loan, which in this case we're going to select it, is to assist in decision making, which should be the primary for all of your short-term device loans. The loan duration days automatically defaults to 5 weeks based on your state plan settings. And then you can change on a case-by-case basis for your short-term device loans. The primary AT recipient is an individual with disability. Inventory devices loan. This is where you can go out and search your inventory and select the specific equipment that is going to be loaned to that individual. So if we're looking for an iPad, we can search by inventory name. Select the iPad. So we're going to select, we'll select iPad 2 here, even though we know that this individual is calling in for a speech communication device. And we'll say maybe we didn't have that one, and we're going to send out another iPad that has the speech communication software on it that they're looking for. And then we can actually change the category for that device to speech communication, so that it gets counted as a speech communication loan in our annual progress report. I can add any other devices loan. We might take that away because it's a little confusing. But these are additional devices that may or may not be in your inventory. And then for the performance measure and decision and satisfaction information, we're going to select a primary area of ATUs, which we got when we talked to the consumer. And then we're going to set the performance measure and the satisfaction to non-respondent when we're making the loan. We'll have an opportunity to go and change that once they check in the loan and you get the survey from them. But for now, we'll just leave that as non-respondent. I can start an anecdotal story here as to why they needed the device. And then I can save that information. That checks out that device for that particular loan, and sets that device to checked out, and then it starts the loan. And then I can print a packing slip that is going to have the client information, the device information that went out, and then of course some text on there. And these packing slips are customizable, and you can get with Megan and Catherine, and they'll help walk you through actually customizing those packing slips and the surveys a little bit so that they pertain more towards your organization. And then of course how to return that device, and you can print that out to send with the device as it goes out. You can also print the survey, which is the performance measure and satisfaction rating, to go out with that device too, and hopefully they'll bring that back when they bring the device back. So once the time elapses and that consumer brings that device back, there are several ways that we can check that device back into inventory, or find that particular loan. We can search by the client name if we know that the client that came in, so I can pull that test person back up, search for that individual, and from here I can see that they have a current device loan out. I can click on that ID, and then I can say check in loan from here. If I don't know if the device just came back, there was no survey on it or anything like that, I can certainly go into inventory. Hopefully all of your inventory is tagged with those numbers, and I can pull it up here and find that iPad that is out. So I can search by inventory number if it's tagged, and I can pull that up here. And just like with the client, I can see all the history on that inventory item. I can pull up the device loan from here, and then check it in from here. There's also a nice report that gets generated in device loan, the loan inventory report. So this is a report of all of my inventory that is out at any particular time that I pull up this report. So from here, I can see, the top one is always going to be my most recent. So I can see that device loan is checked out, and then I can, check it in from here. I can also search by inventory number from this screen, and if I know the particular inventory number, and pull it up easily here, just like I can from the inventory search. So if I check in this loan, I click the check-in link at the end. I put the date that it's being checked back into my inventory, and then I select one or more items if there was more than one item on this particular device loan. If it was for something else, that I can check in all of them, or a particular device. And this is where I'll have a chance to change my performance measure to they answered that would meet their needs, and they were highly satisfied with the program. And then if I was able to collect some more information on how they used the item, how it helped them, to kind of fill out an anecdotal story, I can update that anecdotal story here and make changes to that as needed. And then, of course, I click the check-in button at the bottom of the screen, and that will close out this loan. It will give the loan an end date. Once all the items are checked in, it automatically fills in the end date for that device loan. Any inventory has a check-in date that was equal to the date that you checked it in, and that inventory would be available once again for the next loan or for the next time that you loaned it out. So there's a lot there. That's kind of how I mean, you can, of course, there's several different ways to skin a cat. I always try to start with the client in mind and then add activities for that client. You can certainly just come to this device loan section. Click add a device loan activity. And from here, you can do the same thing. So I can go in and search my clients and pull up my client and add that client to the loan. If there was another individual, and this is, something we just added. If there's multiple individuals on a device loan, you're going to have one that is the primary or the AT recipient, and then you might have one that is a family member or an AT provider or something like that, some other individual that has an interest in that loan or that can be tied back to. So you can have more than just one individual on a loan, but then of course your AT recipient is always going to be your primary person on that loan. So you can start it from here just like you did before, and then I can go in and add inventory for my device loan and continue to fill it out just like I did before. But again, I like to tell people to start with the client, because that way if you start a device loan and you're like, oh, the client's not in there, I need to go back and add the client anyways, it's just easier to start from that client screen, pull up the client information, and then click add device loan or add reutilization or whatever activity that you're performing for that individual client.
Vance,
Yep.
This is Christina. Can I just take one pause right here to make sure that we're clarifying?
Sure.
Thank you so much. So this is Christina again from CFILC. So some of what Vance is talking about makes sense, and some, based on our structure, especially for those of us in independent living centers, makes a little bit less sense. So let's keep in mind as we're going through this training that in California, we are very unique because we are the only state in the union that has the AT Act program intermingled with the independent living network. So when Vance is referring to, multiple clients for one loan, it confused me a couple weeks ago when he was training us internally, because I thought my independent living service provider mind went to, why would you do that? A consumer is one person. There's not multiple people. But in every other state where they're just implementing the AT Act, they're not necessarily going by IL philosophy, where it's all about the consumers. So in the example that Vance used with us, he said, maybe think of it as like a caregiver, personal assistant coming in with the client, and they are assisting the client in checking out a device. And while it's still the consumer checking out the device, the great thing about NATADS is that you can add the second person, because that might be the person who's the point of contact that you would call to get maybe the device back, or a teacher, or a physical therapist, whoever is checking it out with the actual consumer. So that is actually a benefit of the system. Thank you, Vance.
Yes. And
Along those lines, may I ask a question about that?
Go ahead.
So, if an SLP is borrowing a device and she or he is going to use it with their coworkers, so 7 SLPs are going to use this one iPad over the month, is that where we would enter that information?
You could, I guess. So the purpose of your loan on that is going to be to conduct training or self-education or other professional development activity? Is that what the purpose of that is? Loaning that out to all those individuals?
Yes.
They're not making a decision on that, right? You're just providing that so they can provide training and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yep. So yeah, you could definitely add them all as individuals related to that loan. And then if they're SLPs, of course, your AT recipient category would be reps of education. But you would have a way to highlight everybody that touched that device or every SLP that touched that device.
And then when a report is run, does that qualify as one loan or 7?
That would qualify as one loan. One loan. So if you wanted it to count as 7 loans, then you would have to list each loan separately.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there any questions? I mean, we're going to look at device loan a little bit from the other side as well here shortly, but I kind of wanted to start with that because, you know, right now we're getting you're getting a lot of call-ins and stuff like that, and hopefully, you know, at some point we'll have walk-ins again, you know, across the country. But I wanted to start with that, and then we'll kind of look at device loan again from you know, a consumer coming to your website and pulling up devices. So I wanted to go ahead and look.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
This is Paul from CCATC in San Luis.
Sure.
So when are others able to see the information that I'm typing about this particular individual? The notes, like when you were creating a new client file and you might have put some notes in there.
Yep.
Is anyone else going to be able to see that?
Anybody from your organization will be able to see that.
So when can others, I mean, like, you know, we cross loan a lot. Like we may get somebody who's not a desired borrower and I want Joe to know not to loan the device to him or for him to loan the device to that person.
So when you're adding a client, and I'm going to go back to, first off, you can modify clients. So if you pull up, you know, if I type in and pull up this individual that I just created, this test person, I have modify rights, so I can modify this client record. This little checkbox right here enables this client to be shared statewide. So all the organizations across the state would be able to view this client information. So depending on, you know, kind of your structure and stuff like that, if you decide to do that, then you can share that client information statewide. And you even have a little checkbox right here that says do not loan. So if you're having problems getting a device back from an individual, to keep that individual from going to other partners or whatnot, then you could actually share that client statewide, say do not loan. When they did a search for that client, it would pull them up and say, and they would see that flag on that client.
So are those exclusive? Can you do, I imagine do you have to click share client statewide so that everybody can see do not loan, or can you just do not loan? Who's going to see that if I just click do not loan?
If you just click do not loan, that's only, clients are housed within your partner organization unless you share them statewide. So it would only be individuals within your partner organization. Now, I know we had some talk, you know, before about, you know, opening that up and just sharing all clients statewide by default. But I think Megan and Christina and whatnot had some discussion on that.
Yeah, and we also wanted your feedback on that because this is Christina, sorry. Initially, sure. I said in our training, Paul, open it up because I remembered those specific examples on the listserv coming up. But I forget, I think it might have been Kathy, and I don't know if she's here, brought up an example of maybe why we wouldn't want to just open it up statewide. And I don't remember, Catherine, if either of you remember her example, but I remember she gave me food for thought and not having that knee-jerk reaction and to think about it a little bit more carefully before opening it.
I don't remember the specific example. I just remember that it was sort of an issue regarding the HIPAA violations and having that personal information shared across the state.
Well, I guess from a lender of our equipment, we always talked about that in the early days. This was always a contentious issue as well. And it seems really important for me to be able to know that if I'm going to loan something, one of our devices, that it's a dangerous loan. And, you know, this has been on the increase for years, kind of people that have caught on to this whole system. And now they go, oh, we can just get free iPads out of this. To us, it would be extremely important to have that we can share. And I know exactly what this person's record is.
Right. And I will say this too. So if an individual creates an account on the consumer side and goes and, you know, requests an iPad from one partner organization, doesn't bring it back, and then goes and requests an iPad from another partner organization, it automatically checks that box. It automatically sets that, because that client is then, you know, requests a device from multiple partners, so it automatically sets that flag and shares that client information. So,
Paul, is that helpful, or you still think opening it up statewide? Because we could add a note on the client information, reminding folks to let everyone know who's doing a loan, that their information is being shared with the DLDC network of California. I think that's one way we can get through the HIPAA piece, but is Vance's example of what to do in a case where someone doesn't return something, would that do the trick? Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think it's helpful. I mean, there are chronic, you know, borrowers who will send an email to 10 of us or whatever to try to get an iPad, and then hopefully somebody will bite and they'll get one, and then they won't return it. So that'll help with them. But, you know, there's other individuals that are just not trustworthy and I can't get it back from them or whatever. They just try to borrow from us. They're local maybe. But if they might go out, you know, once they get wind of this, they might go outside of our region and do it just as a one at a time kind of thing. So I would still think, I mean, I always tell people, I don't know what everybody else does, but, you know, this is state of California. I always tell this is state of California property that we're loaning out here. And that's kind of implies that this information is statewide. You know, this is not a secret just between you and me. It's not an agreement between you and me. It's the state of California and this equipment and us. So I just think it's already implied. But yeah, I would love to hear others what their input is. But for me, it's really important to have. I want to know when we send stuff out who it's going to and what their track record is, all the time, I guess.
Yeah.
This is Christina. Thank you for that, and I'd love to hear other people's opinions too. I know that while Catherine and I have been putting loans out during COVID-19, we've gotten some interesting applicants as well. And we have done some digging to make sure that we're not just giving a loan to somebody who's created a fake account. And yeah, it is definitely time consuming, but I think it prevented us from letting the wrong person receive a loan.
Yeah, and that option is there. So I mean, if you guys, you know, discuss that and come to a decision that you want to open up the client statewide, then it's just a matter of going in and opening that or setting that setting, and then, you know, it's done. So again, you know, that's kind of your decision, and you know, something that you'll have to discuss and make a final decision on. But we can do that pretty easily. So
thanks, Vance. Catherine, can you add that to our agenda for our next DLDC meeting? Thank you.
So I wanted to talk a little bit before I get into reutilization. I want to go ahead and talk about inventory a little bit. So inventory in the beginning, I had Kevin kind of send out inventory spreadsheets to each one of the partner organizations to send me so that I can import that for you, so it was here. And that lives here within the inventory, and I can view that inventory at any time. If you didn't get the memo on that, or still need to import, do a bulk import of inventory, let me know. And I can work with you guys to do that. And the main inventory within the application is inventory that's going out for device loan, or is available for demonstration, or long-term loan, and that's the inventory that lives here. And you can see, if I pull up inventory, you can see all of the inventory. The nice thing about this too is if you go in and you're searching for an iPad per se, and you can see, okay, I got I've got these iPads, but they're all out. I can actually go into this bottom here and I can say show inventory list from other regions. And remember, when I say region, I mean other partner organizations within California, other DLDCs. And so I can see all the iPads that are available across the state and who has those. One of the things that I'm going to be adding here that we talked about in our discussions before is making this region name a link that'll actually pull up the information for that region so that you can see, you know, name, phone number, address, and stuff like that. So you have some information there quickly at your fingertips, so that you can, you know, if you're on the phone with somebody, you can give that information really quick and transfer them there. So there's some things with the inventory. You're always able to go into your inventory and, you know, adjust it as needed. I can add inventory. If I get another, let's see, say I get another iPad mini in, and it's just like one I already have in inventory, I can come in here, I can click copy and assign it a new inventory number, put the new serial number in, and quickly, and just click save, and it actually quickly adds that to my inventory based on something that's already there. The same goes through if I am, you know, if I'm adding, if I get, you know, 10 of one item in, you know, I can add the first one, then I can just click copy, 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 you know, and quickly add 10 items that are the same without having to rekey the information in, you know, 100 times or 10 times or whatever the case may be, to make that a little easier when you're entering your inventory. At any time, I can come into a piece of inventory and I can view our device repair history. I can view all the loans or all demonstrations, or if it's available for open-ended loan, I can view all the open-ended loans or long-term loans. If I want to open a device up and make it available for a long-term loan, I can click on modify and click reuse open-ended loan, make that available for a long-term loan or open-ended loan at that time. If I have inventory that is maybe no longer appropriate for short-term device loan, and I don't know what your states, and you know, Christina or somebody will have to chime in here, you can move an item out of this inventory and move it to reuse for refurbish, repair, reassign. And of course, that's going to depend on your state law and, you know, on how you guys do things within your state. So if it's no longer available for device loan and you want to move it to reuse, make it available for consumer for refurbish, repair, reassign, then you have the option to do that.
Thank you, Vance. Just add here, we will do some training and discussion on this in the future. It's something that I think some of you might have familiarity with, but not everyone. But it is an option, and historically it's been used when we want to clean out our inventory and get something that's not used very often out and through the door instead of taking up storage. So we'll review that on a future call as well.
And yeah, just so you're aware, though, that's how you would do it. Move it to reuse, and then you could send it out the door.
Vance, this is Megan. We have a few questions in the chat.
Okay, let's go ahead and open up first some questions then.
Yeah, so Krill is asking, is it possible to get our internal inventory number as soon as we add a device to the NATADS inventory?
So when you're saying internal number, is that something that you guys use?
Yeah,
I'm wondering what that.
I'm wondering too. So if you could clarify, if you want to unmute yourself to clarify, I'm wondering if you mean the AT exchange number.
Yeah, he's talking about the AT exchange number. That was a question that a couple people came up with, because it does generate the NATADS ID, but the AT exchange number is something that was generated when you entered it into the AT exchange. What's our answer on that, Christina? Do we want, because it seems like if they were going to get one that fell in line with the numerical codes with the AT exchange, they'd have to enter it into the AT exchange and then move it over to NATADS, which is laborious and eventually
Yeah.
the AC Exchange isn't going to be up anymore. So how should we guide people to create their inventory numbers for themselves? Should it just be switching over to the NATADS ID?
So we will be, yes, let's not use Vance's time to discuss that, but it's a really good question. And I think what we need to consider internally for us is also how we use our internal WASP system, because we've been talking about how we want to make sure that we have a backup system in place as well. So we need to think about what that will look like as we transition. I know we've already transitioned some of our stuff over to WASP. So can you add that, Catherine, also as another topic for another time? Thank you. I think that was Aris or someone at Krill. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. And Vance, the other question here is from Vincent. He wants to know about adding images to devices. If you could walk us through that process really quickly.
Sure. So when you are, I mean, if you already have something in the system that you want to add a device for, of course, you can search for that individual item, open it up, and then modify and upload your image here. I'm not going to choose, I'll just choose this arbitrary one and then click save. Now, if you had multiple items that had this same inventory name and were the same inventory category, it does key off those two fields. You could set this item as a default image for items of this type. So if you were adding 10 7-level communicators, you could set it as a default, click save, copy, do your next one, and then just keep adding those items and not have to add an image to each individual item, but it would key off, you know, this one that is the default image. Now, I know that when we were talking before, you guys were having some issues with that, and I'm still looking into that. But that is, I wanted to explain it how the program should work and will work. And I've done some testing on that, and I'm still not able to find the errors. So it's worked every time I've done it, so I'm not sure why. Some people it's not working. But
so Vance, I think that was an issue when we were importing all of our images from the other database, that there was HTML in the item description and or in the title. And so once that got removed, the item was able to save correctly. Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, awesome. Did that answer that question then?
I think so, Vincent. If it doesn't, let us know in the chat.
Yep. Any others?
No, I don't see any other questions right now, Vance. Thank you.
Okay.
And for timekeeping, we've got about 13 minutes left here for today.
Oh, wow. Okay. Time
I know.
fast. Well, since I really wanted to, and probably what we'll do is we'll hold off on the public side until tomorrow, and we'll really dive into that, because I know that's been, you know, an issue for California. I really like to spend a lot of time on that. So why don't we go ahead and talk about reutilization really quick, and then we'll have that basis for tomorrow's discussion and training. So like I said before, inventory, your main inventory can be opened up for use for open-ended loan or long-term loan. And to do that, you can either add an inventory item, or we'll go ahead and pull up an inventory item. I'm just going to go ahead and choose one of these and modify it and say that this is available for open-ended loan or long-term loan. And I can, oh, that's an interesting error. I wonder if, yeah, and that is going to be that HTML in the description. So that's what you were talking about. And I'm glad that happened, because I wasn't aware that that was something that was happening. So I will definitely go through and make sure that it strips out that HTML so that you're not getting that error when you're entering your inventory. I love it when things like that happen, and I can actually see it firsthand when it happens. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick on this same piece of equipment that I've been looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and modify that because it has no HTML. Say it's available for loan. And also, when you're adding your items or maintaining your inventory, we have a specific checkbox here that says "Do not show on web," and that's for inventory that you do not want to show, on your public site. If you had anything, you don't want people requesting from the site, then you can check that box and it won't show up out there, and then so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then I'm going to go a step further under utilization. There's another inventory that is under utilization. So if, and these are items that are, going to go out for refurbish, repair, reassign, or that, you move from your main inventory. If you move it to reuse, this is where it lives. So you can view those reuse items here. Once you push them out for refurbish, repair, reassign out of your main inventory, you can see that there's none here. So I'm going to go ahead and add one just so that we have something here to look at. So I'm going to say this is available for refurbish, repair, reassign. It's just a test item. We'll call it a speech communication device, and that the retail cost is $500, and that it is available. And this is the status here on available. So you have, pending, available, removed. Those are set, based on if you want it to be showed up on your website as available, then you can choose available. And it's active. Enter a description and add an image. Who added it? Contact information for your organization, and any admin notes that are internal, you can enter there as well. And I'm going to save that. So that's a completely separate inventory, and we do that to kind of separate, things that are like fixed assets or that, remain the property of your DLDC, and items that are going to go out, and then the ownership changes to the consumer that is getting it. For refurbish, repair, reassign, or whatever the case may be. So once that happens, then we can go in and pick on our test person again, pull them up, and say, they're looking for another item. They need it long term. Go ahead and add a reutilization activity. And this is where you'll choose. So, is this a refurbish, repair, reassign item, or is this an item that's going out for open-ended loan? So that this is, a long-term loan where the client keeps it for as long as they need it. And if, at the end of that time period, the device is still, available or can be used again, they return it to you. And then you decide what you do with it from there. So if I choose refurbish, repair, reassign, I have a couple options here. So if this is just a device, maybe it's a walker or something like that that's sitting in my inventory, or it's sitting in my back room. It's not been inventoried. I don't want to inventory it. You don't have to. You can simply just say, I'm going to add a walker. There's one device. Estimated retail cost was $200, and the consumer cost was $0. And I can add it that way. And that's for inventory that's, maybe not inventoried or just in the back room that you have. If it is inventoried, then based on your reutilization type, you can say, all right, I'm going to choose from that reuse inventory. And when I do that, then it brings up my search for inventory, so I can see that test item that I just added. I can add that to the reutilization, close it, say what it was for, why they used the program, satisfaction level, enter an anecdotal story, attach a photo to it if I have one, and save that event. And it'll move that piece of equipment out of my reuse inventory, make it non-available, make it so it doesn't show up on the public site. and you can go from there. I can go back to the client now, and right from that screen, I can go back to the client. I can see that reuse, and then if I want to add another one, I'll click add another one. We'll say this one's an open-ended loan. So this is a device that's going to go out to the client until they need it or until they no longer need it. So, and from here, I can either select inventory that's in my reuse inventory, or I can even select from my main inventory those items that I've designated as available for long-term loan. And I can click add inventory. I can see that 7-level communicator that I had made available for long-term loan. I can add that to my reuse for open-ended loan, select the same responses, anecdotal story, image, and save that. And the nice thing about that is if they ever do bring that device back, or if they use it for a few months and bring it back, just like with device loan, I can check that item back into my inventory. So I can say check in items, pull that back up, say check in items. Going a little fast here because I know we're running short on time. I want to make sure I get to this part of it. And just like with device loans, I'll select what's being returned, check in that loan, that long-term loan, and it'll check that item back in my inventory and make it available for the next consumer. And I know we kind of went through that pretty fast, and there's a lot there. So I do plan on highlighting a lot more of that tomorrow when we dive more in depth with the consumer side of it and consumers making requests. So I know there's probably some questions that popped up during that. And Megan, if you want to kind of lead me through some of those.
Yeah, this is Megan. So we actually have people chatting in the chat box about some duplicate items. So I think we'll connect with that offline. Do folks have more questions? If so, send them in. And then for tomorrow, it sounds like we're going to walk through the consumer side some. And then if folks have anything else that they have questions on, please let us know so we can plan for tomorrow.
This is Christina. While we're waiting for folks to generate questions verbally or through the chat, just want to let everyone know that if we need to schedule a third meeting with Vance, he's more than happy to support us in getting it right. So don't feel like today and tomorrow are the only times we can get this support. We want to do our very best to get it right and make sure that we're all on the same page moving forward. So if you have things after today's meeting, feel free to write them down. We will make time for what we need to do to get it right with everyone.